All right, Unit 2 is transformations. More than that, it is rigid transformations. By rigid, we mean nothing changes. Except for location. We do have a non-rigid transformation. We'll talk about it, but we don't do that until later. Rigid transformations is Unit 2. Rigid, nothing's going to change except for the location. Sides and angles remain congruent. So the sides, we're moving shapes. And angles remain congruent. Sides and angles are congruent. For non-rigid, the size changes. So the sides change length, but not the angles. The angles are congruent. The sides change length, the angles stay congruent. Rigid transformations are your translation, reflection, and rotation. Translation is a slide. Reflection is a flip. And a rotation is a turn. The non-rigid transformation that we have is called a dilation. And the dilation can do one of two things. It can be an enlargement, which means the shape is getting bigger, or a reduction, which means the shape is getting smaller. On your test, they're going to ask you, choose all that are not a rigid transformations, which means you are choosing all of them that the shape is changing sizes. These are rigid transformations. A translation, rotation, and a reflection will not change the sides or the angles. The two shapes will remain congruent. Now, today we're just doing translation and reflection. In a translation, we are going to do algebraic notation. For the translation, which is your slide, it is going to be x comma y, which is a point. This is your starting point, is being mapped to or moved to x plus or minus h, y plus or minus k. So this is your original image. We also call this the pre-image, which is before the move. The arrow means mapped to or moved to. So this, your pre-image, is being mapped to this, which will be your A prime. We saw the prime notation in Unit 1 when we did constructions. So this point is being moved to that point using this algebraic description. The A prime is your image, and it is after the move. So you have before you move it, no prime, pre-image. After you move it, there's your prime, image, pre-image, image. And let's say I took A and mapped it to A prime, and then I wanted to move it again. It becomes A double prime, and if I move it again, A triple prime, and if you move it again, it'll be prime to the fourth. You just add a prime every time you move it. So let's try this. I have A, which is at -6, -1, and I want to map A to A prime using this translation rule. X plus 6, X plus 7. So all you're doing is taking your pre-image. This is your pre-image. You're going to take your X value and put it right here for the X. So -6 plus 6 means that your image is 6, and then do the same thing for your Y's. Your -1, put it right there. -1 plus 7 is 6, and -6 plus 6 is not 6. -6 plus 6 is 0. So your your image is at 0, 6. And if we did this again, so A is going to be at 2, 3, and we're going to map that to A prime. We have to find A prime. Your translation rule is going to be X comma Y minus 3. Again, here's your pre-image. I'm going to use this to get my image. So the X value gets plugged in. I'm not adding or subtracting anything to the X, so it stays the same. The Y value gets plugged in, and 3 minus 3 is 0. Here is my image from my pre-image. The last thing with translation would be to find the translation rule. So let's say I have A, which is at 4, 7, and that's being mapped to A prime, which is at -3, 10. They want to know what translation rule got you there, so you're filling in this piece. So from 4, from my pre-image to my image, to -3, I subtracted 7, and from 7 to 10, I added 3. So there you go. I just found my translation rule. And that's it for translations. If at any point you need to pause or rewind this video, please do so. Now let's go on to reflections. Algebraic notation. For reflections. Right, there's 4 different kinds of reflections. We are going to reflect over the x-axis. We're going to reflect over the y-axis. We're going to reflect over the line y equals x, and then y equals -x. The algebraic rule for the x-axis, you're going to take your pre-image, and your image over the x-axis, you are just changing the sign to the y-coordinate. For the y-axis, all you do is change the sign to the x-coordinate. The line y equals x, this is a line that goes through the origin with a slope of 1. The y-intercept, the plus b, is 0, so it's going through the origin. Your pre-image is being mapped to this one. You just change the order, so your x becomes your y and your y becomes your x. And then the last one, y equals negative x, so this is slope of -1 that goes through the origin. So number 3 is going up and to the right, number 4 is going down and to the right. So your pre-image, you're going to change the order and the signs. So let's try this with a point. We'll say 3, 7. So if A is 3, 7, and I'm reflecting over the x-axis, my A prime is going to be 3, -7. Again, all you do is change the sign to the y coordinate. If you're reflecting over the x-axis or the y-axis, you're changing the sign to the x coordinate. Y equals x, 3, 7. You're going to change the order, so it becomes 7, 3. And then y equals -x. You're going to change the order and the sign, so it's -7, -3. And that's it. The worksheet you're going to get, you're going to have notes on one side and then do the work on the second side. If you don't finish it during class, that's fine. We're going to continue working on that same worksheet next class, which would be Thursday. If you need any of these notes redone, please rewind the video, look at it again at home, anything. Pause it. Don't forget, for reflections, y equals a number is a horizontal line. Y equals some number is a horizontal line. At that number, x equals a number is a vertical line at that number. Okay. If you need anything, feel free to text me or remind.